So that's going to be the negative is the AI ends up training on AI. We're seeing it in the coding world already as well, where, there's a product by Microsoft that is called GitHub. Well, they bought GitHub, and it's a big repository of source code.
Right.
And so people are now using Microsoft's product, but they're using an AI system called Copilot to help them generate code. So then people are taking generated code and then submitting it back into code base, which is now consumed by the model again. And so you get less and less novel code.
That's interesting. I don't think anyone would have predicted that. I think that because everyone was
Well, but when you see it, it's obvious.
yeah. They were expecting this exponential growth, and all of a sudden they're running into a wall where it's like it's just the expansion gets smaller and smaller with each iteration because it's basically it's treating the information it's generated as legitimate as the original information that it actually sourced.
Right.
So, like, I know one thing I see because, like, I get periods where I'm working where I have a dead time and I can't walk away from my phone because old landline phone. I can't walk away from it because I got to take a call. And so I'm like, okay, I got 5 minutes where I literally can't start anything and I can't get up and go. So I'll just, click on the, what the internet thinks is news. And inevitably I end up getting into these stupid lists. And the reason I look, I swear to God, their only purpose is just to make you angry. But the thing is, but I start seeing is, these are computer generated. These are not written by human beings because they're making these weird generalizations, like top 10 TV shows about such and such. And you look and say, okay, I know this TV show intimately. What they're describing never happened anywhere. This could not possibly. I mean, it's vaguely if you'd never seen the show and you just kind of knew about it looking in, you'd say, "Oh, yeah, that sounds like that show." It's like, no, it's not. So yeah, I'm seeing it out there in a lot of the old stalwart websites that were supposed to, like BuzzFeed and all that other garbage. They've pretty much turned over all their writing to chatbots because you could tell by the verbiage, because especially when they're talking about like something like Gilligan's Island. When I was a child, I've probably seen every single episode 30 to 40 times. So I can, when I watched it with my kids the first time, it blew my mind. It blew their minds because I could sit there and go, I'd start saying the lines before they would say them, and I hadn't heard them I hadn't watched it in 20 years. But they were so ingrained in my mind. So when I see these articles, it's like, okay, either this is a person who's never seen this, which doesn't make sense because any of this is easy enough to look up. So this is an interpretation of data rather than somebody who's actually knows what's going on. So.
That's the interesting thing is because there's all these wacky articles that I see all the time, YouTube videos all the time about the threat of AI taking jobs or something. And I think most people go on to a chatbot for like an hour, just 1 hour of your time, just once. That's all you'll need to do if you want to assuage your fears. Just talk about it in something that you are really well versed in.
Mm-hmm.
Just once, especially if it's your career. You just be like, okay, tell me about accounting.
Yeah.
And you'll see the holes very, very quickly.
Yeah. So some companies are actually starting to use this for customer interface. Are they working off a better data set than like ChatGPT? Do they have a more concise, better database? Because I'm starting to hear advertisements where it's like, hey, yeah, use this chatbot that we made up, for your portal to do your save yourself having somebody to talk to the person up front and get most of their questions answered without having to actually pay someone.
Oh, it's unclear. Are they, what is their IT department deciding to do?
Mm-hmm.
Are they renting out data models? Are they doing everything kind of in-house where they're just taking their data and very carefully making sure it's only trained on their data and stuff like that? Or are they allowing other things, are they allowing Chat GPT or whatever? Because you can do that. You can say, hey, Chat GPT, well, not, but you can have other services create bots for you based on your data models. But then it's doing its training however it wants and stuff like that. But you can buy that as a service.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very big thing. I mean, I think this actually started. Um, I don't know when would you say the big data push, like big data became like, oh no, we're going to solve all of our problems because we have computers now that can compile all this data and put it into neat boxes for us so that we can just become amazingly more efficient. And how many companies died on that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When's the last time you used Groupon, John?
Well, never.
That was well, but Groupon was
Yeah.
a thing that they
Yeah.
were touting like, oh, we have all this customer data and we're going to help businesses be able to get customers in the door and everything else. And they're not around really. I mean, they might exist, but
Yeah. They're not a
uh,
thing.
Zillow in the real estate market and everything, or these open door that
Well,
they thought that they
Zillow.
could algorithm their way.
Yeah, Zillow killed themselves. So I mean, because well, uh, they were starting to buy real estate, and so their purchases were affecting the prices and altering the data sets. So
Yeah,
that's
they died eating their own dog food.
yeah. I was going to say
Right.
getting high on your own supply, but there you are.
But yeah, uh, so I think this is just the next iteration of the big data craze in software,
Hmm.
um, wherein you do get some good stuff out of all this. And there have been some software innovations and stuff like that that have been very useful. Uh, but there's also a lot of weird things that happen. Um, like we know that if there's a big enough craze as software engineers, that we can go, oh, if I learn this, I can increase my salary by 10,000 a year. And so this is where you see cheerleaders in the software world for a specific technology. Because they're like, oh yeah, if I become an evangelist for this technology and it goes, then I'm going to increase my salary, by tens of thousands of dollars. So why not do that, even though it might not actually be the proper solution for a business for their needs? I've seen this so many times.
Okay. Let's see. So okay, here's something I may have told you part of this story before, so don't
Mhm.
over prompt me on it because not all of it is a story I could actually be talking about. So
Oh, I see.
back when I was in the Air Force, um, we were working with a neural net chip, and the main thing we were dealing with is we had uh, bazillions of hours of videotape footage, and
Hmm.
what the videotape footage was flashing lights.
Right.
And the Air Force, what the flashing lights were. No, no,
Hey,
nothing that good. But okay, no, we were just high, tripping really bad.
yeah.
Yeah, but no. So what it was is essentially what they had was they had a regular old video camera with a specialized lens on it. And essentially, normal light hits it, flashes, and it looks a particular way. If laser light hits it, it does a completely different thing. It looks wholly different from regular light. So you can differentiate the two looking at, I mean, a human being, it's almost impossible to make a error unless you're just being sloppy, which is possible. And so the problem is there was just way too much data for us to look at. Because I mean, you could fast forward it, but it's light.
Hmm.
So I mean, it could be a blip, and you'd be by so quick you may not even see it. So we ended up actually running it through a neural net chip, and it actually ended up doing a really good job. And you know, the initial part of it was training, where we'd sit there and run it through, saying, okay, oh, at timestamp such and such, here's an event. This is what this event is. And then as it would go along, it'd say, oh, okay. And it would start doing it itself. And it was actually, it was good. It was doing a really good, it wasn't missing anything. And
Right.
its characterization was in the upper 90s. It was doing as good as a human. And
Okay.
it actually had the ability, and would, because it basically drew data clouds when it was all done and said, oh, look, here's this big outlier here. You know, not saying this obviously, but it's like, oh, you might want to check this analyst out because they suck. If we remove this data, the data set actually gets better. So, I mean, it's a pretty particular set of data, but I mean, there's enough variations there. Uh, I mean, there were probably 200 to 250 different potential outcomes from any event you might see. And it was able to
Okay.
differentiate very well. And we're talking early 90s tech.
Okay.
So the thing that kind of blows my mind is I can't figure out what. I mean, I understand why Chat GPT fails. I mean, if you deluge it with garbage data, your output's going to be garbage. That's all there is to it. And so what we were doing is we were fine tuning the data. We were giving it the most pristine data possible. And you know, even like you had 10 different analysts looking at it and saying, okay, this is analyst A doing all this. And by the time it was done, it's like, oh, yeah, don't let analyst C do this anymore because it's skewing the data. I mean, so I mean, pretty good stuff. So I'm wondering why, if you had a standalone chatbot of some sort, if you were specialized to your company, if it could be trained to that level of quality. If you weren't just letting it free range on the garbage on the internet and you actually had an idea of what kind of data you're inputting, if you could get something that's practical.
I think that you can, and I think from if you had an in-house thing with somebody that really understood it and people that care a lot about the data and being able to refine the data and make it better, then you could probably do something that would be pretty good. Uh, Unfortunately, like I've seen, I have been witness to an AI ticketing system
Hmm.
for for people's IT departments, and the way it seems to work, is it just tries to find keywords within a ticket and say, I will route it to this department. Um, but what I'm not seeing people do a lot is like, okay, well, yeah, you have to iterate every week and have somebody have some filter to say, okay, it got these tickets wrong. Why? It needs more training in this area. Um, there's a problem in the IT world with implementing things and then just kind of being like, oh, well, I guess that didn't work, but we'll keep it running. Uh, there's a lot of that going on in the IT world.
Yeah,
So it
we
really
have
would
sunk
depend.
costs.
Yeah. But in your situation, it, it works. I'm not poo-pooing machine learning
Mm-hmm.
as a viable solution to certain problems. However, it's not a silver bullet. It's
Mm-hmm.
not going to solve everybody's problem. And a lot of times, you can solve your problems as different types of businesses with much less time consuming technology and energy output and everything else. Because there's that cost as well. This isn't cheap,
Mm-hmm. Can you talk to that
which
a
we
little
haven't really
bit?
talked about.
Yeah, can you talk to that a little bit about the whole computing power energy usage issue? Because you were touching on that before when we were talking offline.
Yeah. The so First of all, there's hardware costs, because if you attempt, and I did, to try and run one of these large language models just on your average Joe laptop, you're going to be very disappointed. If it runs at all, it'll probably run slowly. Yeah, unless you get a gaming laptop. And we're going to. I think we should also talk about incentives that are very weird in this market as well. But if you have a card with a graphics, if you have a computer with a graphics card, then you have probably the processing power to make this work. As any gamer out there knows, this is an expensive component in your computer. Uh, Graphics cards are not typically cheap, especially cutting edge ones. You can spend thousands on a single graphics card. But the better the card, the better it'll work. I don't know if anybody cares about the technical details of that, but there's a big difference between graphics processors and how they work and just your CPU that you have in your
Right.
laptop. Um, so with that, so you already are having to spend more money on specific hardware just to make this stuff run. To train something, a model to do anything against your specific data, well, that takes processing time. So you might spend however long just training your data. Now, the more hardware you have, the faster that training is going to go, obviously. But then you have to pay for that hardware. And also, if anybody ever has run their high power graphics card through a little kilowatt or anything, you will know that this definitely is a energy suck as well. So what we have with things, large language models, like we have seen with ChatGPT and others, there are gigantic server farms with graphics cards that are running all of this to do the training. I think when we got the first interesting iteration of ChatGPT, it took a year's worth of training in a giant server farm, and it cost $1 billion
Wow.
for something that hadn't shown any profit at all, at all. And it still hasn't shown any profit.
Well, it's not going to either.
No.
Not in its current state. I mean, it's going to have a completely different iteration or
So
start from scratch.
if we take the hardware costs aside, which we shouldn't, because that's considerable, but also just I think that one of the equivalents that they made is they were like, if ChatGPT, if we harnessed all the power that it takes to train and run ChatGPT as it is right now, you could run a city of 50,000 people on it. So
Yeah.
that's an immense amount of energy to expend on something that is very buggy.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just
Yeah.
not delivering on the promises.
Yeah. It's at best it's a toy, and it's not a very good one at this point.
Yeah, it's a very robust autocomplete that you get that you would get out of Microsoft Word or something like similar. Um, so there are those costs. Um, and but one thing that I think is very interesting about this with big data also, and this is why I think it's a continuation of big data is like, well, who's really benefiting from this? I'm in IT and I'm not overly benefiting from this technology. I use it from time to time. It's okay if I ask very small, concise questions. It's not about to write code for me, though, in any real way. I wouldn't trust it. It's a toy, as you say, but there's a lot of toys out there. You can play Farmville, I guess, or whatever the equivalent is now. Um, but what is the saying, John? It's like whenever there's a gold rush, you should get into the shovel selling business.
Yeah. Okay.
And so this is a continuation of big data. So who's benefiting right now? Well, NVIDIA, who makes all these graphics cards.
Okay.
Oh, they're hyping it up like, you might as well. The CEO was like saying, oh, you might as well not even learn to code because that's all going to go away because AI is just going to do all the coding for us from now on, which made people like me fall over.
Mm-hmm.
But he's making a killing right now on this because this is a hyped thing. The other people, all the people that sell infrastructure as a service. So Amazon sells cloud stuff.
Right.
Microsoft sells cloud stuff. They're doing great because there's a whole bunch of contractors and everybody else out there that's going to do some AI implemented solution for you, but you got to buy all this, hours and hours of compute time and hardware and everything else because you're not going to host all this yourself, are you?
Right. So I bet there's probably a lot of pointy-haired bosses out there or pointy-head bosses out there doing the whole, hey, I heard about this AI thing and how I could probably get rid of a few people if we brought this in here. So let's implement this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of weird incentives in this market.
Yeah, I would say the only industry that is probably seeing people getting replaced is some of the early news websites. They're probably there because they've been replaced for a while, and even like I don't know if you're following when Vivek Ramaswamy was talking about buying up BuzzFeed.
No.
Oh, so he's actually a major shareholder in BuzzFeed right now.
Okay.
And
I hope he doesn't lose all of his ass on that.
Apparently he says there's value here, and and he was pointing out all these various things where it's like these, here's growth areas, and his big thing is he wanted it to be more philosophically neutral, basically being a place where everyone could walk in and see something they like and have things work. And he specifically started talking about some of the cheesy articles that they write. He says, yeah, and a lot of these are being written by Chat GPT already, and yeah, keep going in that direction because they are money making models. I mean, people click through them and stuff like that, and why pay someone to do this when it doesn't matter really what they're saying? So, that's the only group of people I can really see who got hit with this. But I mean, yeah, Burger King pays a lot now, so